Hi there, it's James here. I came outside to do this video because I thought it was a bit more interesting. I'm in a little area of woodland, you can see. It's rather nice. Anyway, this video is about what I learned after my first winter on the canal boat. I was totally unprepared. I didn't read anything about it. I don't tend to do much research into things. I tend to find it puts me off, so I kind of like to jump in. There's too many scary stories. Anyway, so I'm going to try and be fairly concise, to the point. So straight in, I've spent you know, the whole winter all the way through. Now in March, and I didn't go anywhere else, live anywhere else. So you know, I had the full experience. I've been round about Birmingham in Britain, so we've had quite a lot of snow and ice, and it's got really cold at some points. So you know, it's a fair indicator. So one of the first thing, I ended up having to buy some coal. Not a lot, a few bags, but in certain places that I was, it just wasn't possible to scavenge enough wood to keep the boat warm. And one of my cats is very old, and she gets a bit creaky, and I wanted to keep her warm, so I ended up buying a few bags of coal. So I mean, you could certainly get by foraging 100%, I think, if you were really desperate, but I wasn't that desperate, so I bought a few bags of coal. Oh sorry, it's still really chilly. It was very muddy. That was one thing I noticed. Most normal people will probably want some kind of Wellingtons and stuff. Towpaths get really filthy, which means if you're not very particular, your boat gets really filthy. Mud everywhere. Yeah, really muddy. Obviously depending where you're staying. The thing I learnt was to cut lots and lots of firewood up in advance. I normally cut my firewood up as and when I need it. Every sort of, I pop outside, cut up enough wood for like half a day, and then I carry on like that. In the winter, you don't necessarily want to do that. You don't want to get up on a freezing morning and have to first of all go outside and cut up loads of wood. That's a pain. So yes, yeah, cut up lots of wood in advance. Get a big store inside the boat of nice dry wood if you can, or wherever you keep it. Yeah, that's another one. If you can spare the fuel, I found it's a very good idea to bank up the fire overnight, especially to help keep the kitty warm. But it does make a big difference when you get up. I know people have recommended I do that before, and it is a good idea. But it does use, you know, you do have to put a lot of wood on to keep it on all night. Oh, I found I did with the sort of wood I was using. Something interesting. I encountered frozen water points on the side, so I got to water point, really needed some water. It was completely frozen. So what I did, I went into the boat and boiled some water. Actually I got some, because when the boat's been travelling it creates its own hot water, so I got a big pan of very hot water, and I went out and poured it over the water point, over the little stand point, and look at that, it all defrosted and immediately worked. And that was a really good tip. I'd highly recommend that. But yes, some of the water points were frozen and things, so they couldn't use the Elson cleaning points properly and things like that. Right, another one. Boats steer weird in the ice. I was kind of forced to move in the ice at one point, and although they go forwards okay, if you try and do sort of very gentle, subtle curves, the ice seems to stop you from making subtle curves. Might just be my bad driving, but I found it much more difficult to do very gentle turning. So that's worth bearing in mind. So, it's sniffy. I should have stayed in and done this, shouldn't I? Okay. When I was going along in the ice as well, which is interesting, some guy called out to me from the towpath and said to be careful. You see, I was going backwards at the time due to circumstances which I won't bother boring you with. I was travelling backwards on the boat, which is also, I find, quite tricky. And he said to be very careful, because if you travel backwards in the ice, his friend, a piece of ice went into his stern gland and dislodged a washer, like something anyway, and he didn't realise, and water poured into his engine bay and sank his boat. I mean, I don't know the validity of that. I don't see why he would lie, but anyway, do be careful, because obviously be careful reversing in the ice. Another interesting thing is, apparently someone told me that thick ice can skewer into plastic boats and sink them, so if you're going to travel through thick ice, be careful if you go near plastic hulled boats. Again, this is just what I have been told. It might not be true. Okay, another thing I found out was that the generator I have was phenomenally useful in the winter, because my solar panels can't provide nearly enough power. Sometimes you get, even though I've got 4 big panels, just on the grey day after grey day after grey day for weeks on end, it's just not doing it. So the generator was really, really useful for that. Obviously you could run your engine and stuff, but I use my little generator. I also, probably all of you boat people will know this, but to do all your big jobs that need doing before the winter, the ones on the outside of the boat, like if you want to do all the seal all your windows, that make sure all they're doing well, or you've got things that need repainting, do them in before the winter, because it is not very fun doing outside jobs in the middle of the winter. You can't necessarily stick to schedules either. You know, if you've got, you know, you're supposed to move every 2 weeks on the canal. If you're due to move on a particular day, you might not be able to move because of the amount of ice. Your back deck could be covered in ice, the locks that you're going through could be covered in ice, your gunnels could be slippery, there could be frozen puddles and stuff on the towpath, which might make it a bit hazardous if you're not as stable as you might like to be. So I found it a bit, you know, I thought sometimes when it was very icy that it was a little bit risky, and thus you did not want to move until the worst of the ice had gone. So yeah, it could mess up your schedule a little bit. We don't really have a schedule, but it's something to bear in mind. Another thing, our lights were insufficient for the winter. I do a lot of drawing and that kind of thing, and Ruth does a lot of crafting for her work. She's an embroiderer, and it's really, really dark and dingy, so we got new lights, which I showed you on a previous video, and that made everything fantastic. But yeah, make sure if you do that kind of thing you have some decent lights, LED ones, because you don't want to keep your proper, you know, you don't want to run an inverter all the time in order just to run some lights. That's mostly it. There's just one more thing, which is a bit silly, perhaps doesn't apply to everyone, but because the fire's on all the day, you can cook pulses really, really easily, which is great. If you eat a lot of pulses, beans and things like that, you can cook food which takes ages to boil, I suppose stews and the such, and you can leave them on all day to cook for free, and that's brilliant. So I'm not sure how interesting that is, but I don't know, it's some things to sort of bear in mind, I suppose. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. I hope me coming out and sitting in the freezing cold made it slightly more interesting for you. I just saw a big red fox run past there. That was rather nice. Okay, all right. Have a good evening, and yeah, thumbs up if you enjoyed it, or subscribe. And I'll speak to you again soon. All right, bye bye. Thank you.